specialist at Stennis Space Center, and she has a team of experts that are here to share information with you today. Before we get started, I would like to turn the floor over to Ms. Brianna Lynn, and she's going to walk us through a few housekeeping notes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Parker. Welcome everyone again for joining the OSBP Learning Series, How to Do Business with Stennis Space Center. If you have any questions during the presentation, we encourage you that you utilize the Q&A box. We want to explain that there are differences between the Q&A box and the chat box. So you will utilize the chat box if you're having any technical difficulties or you would like to chat with each other. And then you will also use the Q&A box for more formal Q&A questions that will be directed to the speakers at the end of the presentation. While you are not speaking, we encourage everyone to please keep your microphones on mute. Also, we also would like to remind you guys that there will also be a survey that will be sent out at the end of the presentation. Just a few reminders that the presentation today will be recorded and you all will receive an email notification once the presentation is available on our OSBP website. So at this moment, we will be conducting a poll, and we will ask that if you can so kindly please fill out the 3 poll questions. So the first poll question will be, is this your first webinar hosted by the NASA Office of Small Business Programs that you have attended? How did you learn about this webinar? As well as we would like to gather some information for your classification that applies to your institution, organization, or company. Now at this time, I would like to turn it back over to Mr. Philia Parker.
Thank you, Brianna. I'm going to spend a few minutes just to share a little bit about our organization, the NASA Office of Small Business Programs. Our office is located physically in Washington, D.C., in the southwest part of the city, and we are under the leadership of Mr. Glenn A. Delgado, who is our Associate Administrator. Our vision is to promote and integrate all small businesses into the competitive base of contractors that pioneer the future of space exploration, scientific discovery, and aeronautics research. Our webinar series that is offered on a monthly basis on the 3rd Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time is an opportunity for attendees to receive in-depth training relevant to small business, as well as an opportunity to directly engage with our NASA small business community and at various occasions with our featured guest speakers. Next slide, please. So now I am going to just take a moment to introduce our speakers. I know that we have a special guest from our team who is planning to join us. So when that guest comes on board, if you could please just let me know, and I will definitely pass the floor over to him, the mic over to him. So that
Mr. Delgado, can you unmute your mic?
I think I'm trying to right now.
Perfect, Glenn, we hear you.
How successful it was.
Yep, the floor is yours, Glenn.
Jeez. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, everybody, but I had a couple of minutes trying to get connected here. I just wanted to introduce one of our speakers today, Ms. Mary Berg. It's very, gives you an idea how important small business is at NASA, that the Associate Center Director for Stennis is actually coming to give you an overview. That just tells you how close Office of Small Business and Office of Procurement, as well as the senior leadership of the centers, all work together to make sure that NASA is providing the best possible opportunities to small businesses. It is critical. You can see that, we actually, our scorecard's coming out next week, but we can't divulge that. But we've done very well, especially down at Stennis and NSSC down there, where we're doing very successful matchmaking and matching our requirements with the small businesses, not only from that area, but throughout the country. So it's very important that you guys do come to these webinars that we do have once a month. I believe it is the 3rd Wednesday of the month. And you'll get a lot of good information, not only on how to do business with NASA, but how to do business with everybody in the federal government. And this fact that we have an Associate Center Director here speaking with us, and again, thank you, Mary, very much for attending and doing an overview of Stennis. I greatly appreciate it. It shows you how serious NASA is with providing opportunities with small business. And with that, I'll say thank you guys very much and turn it back over to the ladies.
Thank you, Glenn, for that warm introduction. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm excited that so many are able to join us today, and even more excited that I was able to present the Stennis overview for you. So with that, first, the next slide, please. And the next slide, please. So NASA's Stennis Space Center is located in Hancock County, Mississippi, along the banks of the Pearl River. The area was actually chosen because of the vastness of space that was there to create the unique buffer zone that is necessary for propulsion testing, as well as its access to waterways such as the Pearl River, railways, and major interstates. Next slide, please. The center's work is actually accomplished in what we call the fee area, the 13,800 acres that is shown here and highlighted in yellow. The fee area is surrounded by that 125,000 acre buffer zone that I spoke about. It's actually a national asset. The buffer zone is largely privately owned, but is subject to easements that prevent development, while the fee area is all NASA owned. Next slide, please. So many refer to Stennis Space Center as a small center, but our population is over 5,000. Our current replacement value is over $4 billion. We have 4.2 million square feet of building space, over 8 miles of canals, and 45 miles of roads. In fact, Washington, D.C. actually fits, as you can see, within inside of our buffer zone here. And if you'll go to the next slide, you'll see that all the centers actually fit within our fee area with the exception of Kennedy Space Center. So we're not really that small after all. Next slide, please. In its infancy, Stennis supported the Apollo program, where we tested the first and second stages. In the 70s, we went on to support the Space Shuttle program, where we tested all of the main engines. And today, we are supporting the Artemis program, where we are testing the RS-25 engines and just recently completed testing of the core stage. So next slide, please. So this is a map of our test complex. Our A and B complexes are where we typically test very large engines and stages with long duration test capability. In the A complex, we currently have one active stand, A1. That is where we test the RS-25 engines for the Artemis program. We'll continue to actually perform tests and checkout of those engines through the duration of the program and support our human spaceflight. Our A2 and A3 test stands are currently mothballed, sorry about that, no active programs. The A2 test stand last tested a J2X engine in around 2014. And our A3 test stand was actually developed and activated to test the upper stage engine for the Constellation program. But unfortunately, the program was canceled before the stand construction was completed. The B1 test stand has been under a very long-term agreement, over 20 years, with Aerojet Rocketdyne for them to test the RS-68 engine for the Air Force. They recently completed their final test and will keep the B1 stand ready for the next years in case they perform any additional testing. B2 was refurbished and built out to support the green run of the core stage for the SLS rocket. We received and loaded the core stage and the stand in early 2020, although we encountered obstacles related to COVID and a number of storms, I want to say probably about 5, to include Hurricane Zeta. But with that, the team was able to still press forward and conduct a series of tests on the stage that culminated in a full duration hot fire in March of this year. The core stage has recently been transported to Kennedy Space Center, where it will be integrated into the full SLS vehicle and is slated to launch later this year. Next up for B2 is modifications and buildup that we'll do to receive the exploration upper stage for testing in the 2024 timeframe. In our E-complex, we conduct small engine and component testing. E1 has a very unique capability where it's able to test smaller engines and components that have very high pressures and high flow rates. We currently have 3 active agreements in E1 where we're supporting Virgin Orbit, Launcher, and Blue Origin. In E3, we're supporting follow-on subscale testing to help gather data for the exploration upper stage. And for E2 and E4, we actually have a commercial space launch act agreement with Relativity Space Incorporated. Through this agreement with SSC, Relativity's been able to make use of underutilized facilities to help them develop their systems supporting their commercialization of space. Next slide, please. So at this time, I'd like to show you a video that highlights the Artemis program, and particularly areas at Stennis and Michoud that contributed to this video, although it's really across the entire agency, but I'll try to narrate through this and highlight some of the areas where Stennis and Michoud have particularly been part of the program. So here's the testing of the boosters in Utah. Those are the engines that are actually in our 9101 facility. What you're seeing there is a test of the RS-25 engine and the testing of that is the movement of the core stage. This is actually at Marshall, where they did a destructive test of the core stage. This is our guppy, where they transport articles. So this is the work at the Michoud assembly facility, where they were actually assembling the core stage to get it ready to ship to Stennis Space Center for testing. And here they're rolling it out and loading it onto our Pegasus barge to actually transport it via waterway and up the Pearl River to Stennis Space Center through our navigational locks. Here's where we've actually lifted it into the stand. Beautiful shots here. Now you'll actually see we have now transported it, like I said, to Kennedy, where it'll be integrated into the SLS vehicle and hopefully launched by the end of this calendar year. Thank you. If we can return to the presentation. Thank you, Brianna. Okay, this is a list of all of our commercial partners. As previously mentioned, we've been working with Aerojet Rocketdyne for a number of activities, including the RS-68 engine on B1, but also their hydrocarbon boost risk mitigation program at E1. We've also worked closely with Boeing, of course, in support of the core stage activities. And we continue to work with potential commercial partners to identify ways that we can help support them in their development cycles, utilizing our unique capabilities and skills. Next slide, please. Stennis is a model for government efficiency. NASA and about 50 federal, state, academic, private, and technology-based organizations together create a unique federal city. In fiscal year 21, the federal city approach of working with our tenants offset Stennis's operating costs by about 67%, or over $28 million. Of the 3.7 million square feet of NASA usable space that we have, 91% is currently occupied. The center is growing with room for additional growth moving ahead. Next slide, please. So Stennis has a direct global impact of over $800 million. A Mississippi State University study reports that Stennis is a major contributor to the Gulf Coast economies of Louisiana and Mississippi. It spends almost 74 cents of every dollar within a 50-mile radius area. Next slide, please. So approximately 5,200 employees work out at Stennis Space Center for the NASA, for Navy, NOAA, and other federal, state, and private entities at Stennis. About 86% of our employees reside in the 4 county parish areas that are shown here. Next slide, please. So what is Enterprise Park? So Enterprise Park is a technology park that we're developing at Stennis that's located within the boundaries of our fee area. It's very similar in concept to Exploration Park outside the gates of Kennedy Space Center, or Redstone Gateway that's located outside the gates of Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. The concept was driven primarily by the remoteness of Stennis and the growing interest from organizations and companies to co-locate at Stennis in order to support the missions of existing federal city tenants. While we don't have much remaining underutilized facility space, we do have lots of land to allow for expansion. The 1,100-acre parcel is located in the northwest corner of our fee area and would be managed externally via a public-public or public-private partnership through a land lease to a development entity that would develop and operate the park. 2 large sites within the 1,100 acres have been certified through Mississippi Power's Project Ready program, and future expansion locations have also been identified on the southern edge of our fee area. Next slide, please. So Stennis also has a restricted airspace. The Federal Aviation Administration established our restricted airspace back in 1965, and it was approved for expansion in 2016. The expansion was necessary to perform propulsion testing safely and to enable Stennis tenant missions and to effectively and efficiently prepare military teams for deployment. The expanded airspace accommodates both NASA and the Department of Defense missions through 5 sectors. Sector A actually supports the NASA and Stennis propulsion test missions. Sector B supports unmanned aerial system activities through agreements that we have with other agencies and educational universities. And sectors C, E, and F are designated for Department of Defense training and readiness activities. NASA maintains schedule oversight for all the sectors so as to deconflict across NASA and Navy missions. NASA also makes UAS airspace available to interested external parties through our cost reimbursable partnerships. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A section of the chat. So thank you very much. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Kay Doan.
Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate all your support for the small business program at Stennis. We couldn't do all the things that we did if we didn't have our advocates of our upper management supporting us. So with that, today I just want to thank everyone else who's joined us, and we're going to get started to talk a little bit about small business at Stennis Space Center. Okay, next slide. So with that, I have a little introduction video that I'd like to show you. Hopefully this will be a little bit of an informative information to tell you about the small business that operates at Stennis. Thank you so much for showing that, Brianna. Next slide, please. So just to get started a little bit on our marketing here at Stennis, we always want to point out to all our vendors that are interested in doing business with NASA to ensure that you're familiar with the different NASA centers and the mission of each center. Just make sure that you understand when you're calling a small business specialist that you're aware of the type of procurements that they do procure at the centers. I think this will help you to go a longer way in finding success in your mission. Next slide, please. And just a reminder, we have small business specialists that are located across the United States. And once again, you can be prepared to know who you're speaking with and to be aware of their different missions. So with the small business specialists that are located, it's very easy to either use our mobile app or as well as to use our websites to find their contact information. Next slide. And so from that, we have our NASA webpage that is informative of all kinds of information. We're actually in the process of updating this webpage, so be in the future for a brand new look. But until then, we still have different tabs that you could utilize with all kinds of resourceful information. Next slide, please. And part of that on the main page, if you notice on the left-hand side at the bottom, is a NASA acquisition forecast. So I just wanted to point out that because look for the little gears. It's very important that you're familiar to know where to go and find the forecast, as well as if you wanted to reach out to the different NASA centers, you can go to the contacts, and each one of the little tabs is going to give you a little bit about the mission that you could use to learn more about the centers, as well as attend these webinars. And I also want to point out at the bottom of that page, there's also a PDF that's for technical advisors, and that's another resource that you could utilize too to send emails if you have any questions about technical things that are being purchased for Stennis. Next slide. And with that, another thing I wanted to point out I find is to be very useful is our mobile app. Now, this is one thing that you can only come here on our mobile app currently to find the active contract listing. And so that's really important for the vendors to be ensured that they're aware of the different contracts that we currently have in place. And so from that, you can always come down here. If you notice on the left-hand side, somewhat in the middle of the screen, it says contracts. And so from the top, there's a drop down that you can select the type of contract that you're interested in. And from here, it's going to give you the name of the center, the name of the contract number, and the period of performance, as well as the small business category that the contract's fallen under. So what's really important is for you to know which contracts are currently being awarded, so you could do your homework to know when the period of performance is coming to an end. You can use the contract number within here to go research to find out what were the requirements for that initial award. So right now on the mobile app, it's the only place that you can go to find a current listing of active contracts, as well as the mobile app's going to give you some different information of the goals as well as points of contact that you can utilize. So this is definitely a must to download and to have. Next slide, please. And I also want to point out, I think another important thing is to be aware of the market as things are being posted. Beta.SAM is in the transition of updating to just regular SAM. So they do say that all the links are going to transfer, but I believe it's going to be May 24th is when the new website will come about. They claim everything's going to transfer smoothly. But with that, I wanted to point out that not everyone's aware that you can set up day-to-day email notifications from SAM. And so from this, I have a quick follow the red arrows around, and it'll manipulate through the page to let you save and get an email notification every day of requirements that you're interested in. I also want to point out we will post requirements on beta.sam, or soon to be just SAM, as well as SOUP and GSA. Next slide. And part of my video showed a little bit of the small business showcase that we used to hold here in the atrium. Since the virtual world that we've started, we're now doing things of this nature. And so I still hold a virtual showcase, every quarter, So if you're interested in that and you would like to provide a 10-minute capability presentation on your company, please contact me. I'll be happy to add you to that listing. And just some other outreach events. We also do small business roundtable meetings, basically another virtual conference with you if you'd like to set up one-on-one, as well as our MSET, which we got a presentation on that coming up later on, is another way that we do our outsourcing. But please feel free to contact me anytime if you have any questions. Next slide. I also have another list here of resources that I find to be very helpful. It's a little time consuming for vendors to get set up and to understand the government aspect of trying to do procurements. So take the time to go through the different websites, read about them, and make sure you understand. If you don't actually have a contract for SOUP or GSA, nothing stops you from going through those vendors and seeing who actually has a contract and try to become a sub with them. So reach out to other vendors as well and create your teaming partners too. Next slide, please. And with that, just give you my information again. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime you need anything. I'm always here. Next slide. And thank you again. Appreciate it. And with that, I'd like to introduce our next guest speaker is Mr. Belfield Collymore. He's a contracting officer here at Stennis Space Center. Thank you, Belfield.
Thank you, Kay. Good afternoon. As Kay stated, my name is Belfield Collymore, and I am the Chief of Center Management Support Division within the Stennis Space Center Office of Procurement. I would like to briefly go over some of the ways of doing business with Stennis Space Center. The next slide, please. First, I'd like to point out that we always work with Kay and the Office of Small Business Programs in prior to conducting any market research or before deciding on a size standard or a socioeconomic category. So it's really important that you reach out to Kay with your capability statements, provide those to her. We have a central file, a shared drive where she posts that information, and we as contracting officers can go out and look at those capabilities before we engage with Kay. But it's always a good source for us. So it's something I recommend you do, to reach out to her and provide that information. Also, another way is to reach out, look at our RFIs that we post on datasam.gov, looking at SCWP and also at GSA. Next slide, please. In 2018, NASA started its transition to a new agency operating model. As a result of that transition, acquisition of any institutional service requirements over the simplified acquisition threshold that fell under an identified product service line must be coordinated with the procurement portfolio manager and the enterprise requirements manager. So PSLs are a defined category of recurring institutional and program or project specific requirements. The chart identifies the multiple reasons and benefits of their approach. Stennis Space Center recently awarded an enterprise contract for administrative services. The contract provides administrative services for Stennis, Johnson, and White Sands training facility. So that's one example of the benefits of a PSL. Next slide, please. The PSL buying locations are identified in the chart. SSC is the regional buying location for construction. So as you can see, this is a good source, a good location to identify the different type of services provided by the different locations. Next slide, please. As I've previously stated, the Stennis Space Center is the buying location for construction. And as you can see here, we have identified the major NAICS code that fall under the different services that we buy here at Stennis. Next slide, please. These are the primary vendors of supply and services here at Stennis. these are the slide identifies the top 5 contracts for supplies or services. 3 were awarded as 8A competitive, 1 as a small business set aside, and the other was full and open competition. A representative from SACOM and Rivertech will be covering their NASA contract shortly. Next slide, please. Again, here we have identified the vendors under the multiple award construction contracts. This available information will be available to you as the slides are available. Next slide, please. At this point, what I'd like to do is simply go over some reminders. Again, this is a reminder based on what we have experienced here over the past year. Again, it's a disclaimer that this information is for general discussion only, as each solicitation is unique. But one of the main things that I would like to point out at this time is to simply make sure you read the solicitation and follow the instructions. One recommendation is to create a checklist. And the reason I say that is because when we post an RFP or solicitation and we receive proposals, we also create a checklist to ensure that everything that we requested is being provided. And so that way, you don't miss anything. We've had instances in the past where offers fail to include critical information. And so, you put all the effort and energy into something, and then you miss some critical information. So the goal is to avoid things like that. So a checklist is always a good thing. Pay attention to page limitations. Within the solicitation, it identifies page limitations, it identifies font size, etc. Pay attention to those things, please. And again, ensure your offer is complete. As many of you may have noticed, at this time we're in the process of, well, not in the process of, most contracts, it says the CO may award without discussions, and that occurs often. We don't normally go back out, so your best proposal should always be your first proposal. Next slide, please. And so just to go into it a little bit more as far as the technical proposal, focus on the requirements identified in the PWS performance work statement provided with the solicitation. I know quite often offers reach out to the agency and request a copy of the old solicitation and the old PWS and the contract. However, those things change. So please make sure you focus on the requirement on the PWS and the requirement that's posted with that solicitation. And another key thing is to not rephrase or restate the requirement. Identify your company's unique approach. And also what I notice is a lot of times offers, especially incumbents, assume that, hey, they know my work, they know how well I do. And so they don't respond in accordance with the PWS, and that's not necessarily a good thing. You need to follow the requirements as identified within the PWS, regardless if you're the incumbent or not. With regards to past performance, submit up to the number of references requested. So if they said submit up to 5, you can submit up to 5. If you only have 3, then submit 3. You don't have to submit all 5, but if you have it, submit it. Ensure your references are recent and relevant. So again, within the RFP, it will tell you, it will tell you what recent means. It'll tell you what relevant means. So pay attention to those things and make sure your past performance reference comply. Also, it's also the offeror's responsibility to follow up with the point of contact identified within the past performance reference. Most of the time, they'll ask, the solicitation will ask the offeror to send out a survey to the customer. this customer will then complete that survey and send it directly to the contracting officer. Again, it's the offeror's responsibility to follow up with that customer to make sure that that survey was submitted in time. And then as far as pricing, check your math. Make sure the prices are consistent between worksheets and also within the CLINs. Again, you know, these things kind of sound basic, but you know, they are the kind of things that we noticed over the past year within several solicitation and response to those solicitations. Next slide, please. Here, I'd like to point out the location of the acquisition forecast. It's on the NASA website. The red arrow identifies where you can go in and reach a forecast, and below that is an example of the information you can find. And as you can see, you can sort the information in several ways to identify exactly what you're looking for. Next slide, please. We have some helpful references, just locations where you can go out and get information, kind of adding to the information that Kay provided. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'd like to say thank you for your time and for attending this webinar. Thanks. Brianna?
Thank you so much, Belfield. I appreciate that. And with that, the next guest speaker we have is Mr. Tom Stanley, and he's our Center Technology Transition Lead for Stennis. And I also want to point out that he has been a dedicated technical advisor to me with the small business. So he has always been there for me for my outreach events and for showcases. And so I just want to say thank you to Tom, and the floor is yours.
Hey everyone, I'm the Center Technology Transition Lead for Stennis. What does that mean? Nobody knows. Basically, it means I run the SBIR program for Stennis Space Center. I also support headquarters on STTR. So I've been around SBIR for around 25 years. So I got a lot of history in the program and stuff, and kind of seen the way that the program works and how it works well. So. Next slide. And so the whole thing, SBIR is a congressionally mandated program, which means we have to do it. Money's appropriated for it, and we have to spend it. We spend it in order to engage small businesses in doing research and development for us to develop new technologies that help us solve our challenges. I'll note that this is normally an hour-long presentation, and so I'm going to hit the major highlights and the major things you need to know. And one wonderful thing about this program is it's the only solicitation where we can have conversations when we're not in a competitive mode. We can actually tell you things we're interested in and what our problems are and our challenges, and we can have those discussions. So it is a wonderful program that gives us a great opportunity. So next. So I would point out that whether you participate in this program is really dependent on who you are. If you're a service provider, you want to provide services to NASA, or if you're a supplier wanting to supply, provide computers, IT support, or those kind of things. Office supplies, and there are other programs for you for providing those. In fact, we have some speakers that have come up on that. This is really for a company that's more engaged in technology development, more interested in research and development, more interested in developing a technology which could be a core part of their business, to provide technology for NASA, for DoD, or for commercial providers. So. This is more of a way to get research and development money into your company. So we have some other programs through Inspires and also dual use cooperative agreements that come out periodically that all go through the procurement system. So next. The only thing to say here is 3.2% of extramural research and development money goes to SBIR. 0.5% goes to STTR. The difference in those two programs is STTR must have participation with a research institution. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same. But in the bigger picture, 3.65% of NASA's extramural research and development we must spend with a small business. In fact, we produce an annual report that goes to SBA and OMB that actually says what we did with the money and how we spent it. And if you know, we get do bad letters if we don't spend it. So you have a highly motivated buyer, which is always a good thing. So those are the other agencies listed there that also have SBR, STTR programs. And so depending on what you do, you know, there are other avenues to seek receptors, you know, for a particular proposal. So next. I just showed this chart. It's a little bit of eye chart, but this is a nationwide program and money goes to every state in the union. And so you say, well, I'm in South Mississippi or South Louisiana and, you know, I don't really have, you know, NASA doesn't have much interest in me. Well, you would be wrong. And so there are opportunities there. It is what you make of it. So next. So it's a phase program. You come in at phase one, basically do a proof of concept, look at your business and marketing. The phase one is competitive. It's 6 months for SBIR, 13 months for STTR because of the research institution and going along with the university schedule. If you then you submit a phase two proposal. If you're selected, it's $750K for 24 months. That equates to about 3 or 4 people for over a 2-year period. It puts a roof over your head. It puts you in business. And what's always good is to be a viable concern in the terms of the Edgar database of corporations. 90% of new businesses fail the first year. Well, if you can get a 2-year contract here, it gets you past that valley of death. And it really opens up opportunities for you to actually grow your company, and also provides you a step up to go for other opportunities. Those people you have, you can use their available time to go after other proposals and other opportunities. And it really gives businesses a really good way to bootstrap yourself up. So next. So how do you know what NASA's interested in? You know, so you know we're motivated. You know we have to spend the money. So how do you know? Well, on the program website, we actually post our annual solicitation. So you can actually go out there and pull a solicitation, and you can look at everything that we asked for in FY 2021. And you can actually look at the awards we make and see what kinds of things that got selected. We'll in a few weeks we'll start preparations for the FY 22 solicitation, and I'll tell you, while we don't know what's going to be in FY 22, I will tell you our requirements are more evolutionary than they are revolutionary. And what I mean by that is we have the same problems this year that we had last year, and the same problems the year before. That these are more long-term systemic kind of problems, and they tend to kind of evolve over time, and it all, you know, suddenly we don't discover this radical new problem that we need a small business come in and solve for us. So you have a motivated buyer, and we put our requirements out there in writing every year, and you can have pre-solicitation release discussions with us to actually talk about your ideas and gauge our interest level in what you're proposing. So that's why it's such a wonderful program for new startups. You know, 2 or 3 person businesses. It provides a wonderful opportunity to get in and get some funding and actually make yourself a viable concern. So that's always a good thing. So next. So our subtopics, the SBIR is a NASA-wide program. Stennis manages 2 subtopics, one around advanced ground propulsion test technologies, one around intelligent embedded sensors. But the whole gambit's there, and all of those opportunities are all available to you. And so we can help you find those opportunities, find potential subtopics, and find the right center that you should be working with in order to refine your concepts. So solicitation release is going to be January. So right now is the time to be looking at this and starting putting together your thoughts and trying to have those discussions. So chance of an award cold is about 3 out of 10. But if you can have those discussions, you can improve your odds to 60% or 70%. Much better chance of getting an award. But, you know, and we have the full range of technology options that are out there. So next. This is pretty much a closing slide where you say, well, I don't have the capability to develop something that NASA could use. I can't do a rover. I can't develop, you know, a full valve, or I can't do this. Well, here's an example of the Curiosity rover that's on the surface of Mars, and it has multiple technologies that were developed through an SBIR program. So you don't have to do the whole thing. You don't have to bite the whole apple. You can eat certain parts of it, whether it's a battery technology, a vacuum pump, or gearboxes, or whatever else. Some of the stuff we're working in our subtopics is, you know, simulation modeling. We have people working on valve technologies. We have corrosion control problems. We have, you know, a multitude. We have wireless sensors being developed. You don't have to do the whole thing. You can do a piece, and those technologies and their results get infused into a bigger NASA project. So I would tell you to get creative, put your NASA hat on, and think about how you can help us solve some of our toughest challenges. So, and it's a tremendous opportunity to get real money into your program. And it's always good to have a customer that pays on a net 10. So, there's some bureaucracy that goes with this, but also there's a huge opportunity. So, next. And so our website's out there, the help desk is out there. There's one of me at every center. And so we can help get you to the right people. There's plenty of people around that can actually help you understand how you may make yourself relevant to a NASA project and actually get funding through the SBIR STTR program. So with that,
thank you, Tom.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Very informative and very interesting. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ms. Angela Lee. She's our S3 procurement supervisor, and she is my go-to person for my prime vendor who maintains our facility, for her getting all my phone calls or all the vendors that want to do business with Stennis. So Angela, I want to thank you for participating, and thank you for receiving all my phone calls. Your turn.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. As Kay said, my name is Angela Lee. I am the procurement supervisor for CENTCOM Space Services, or shortened version S3. S3 is a partnership between BWXT and PAE. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. This contract is often referred to as a SACOM contract, Synergy Achieving Consolidated Operations and Maintenance. We have consolidated S3 as part of a consolidation of 3 contracts, 2 of them with NASA's Facilities Center here. It's the FOSC side, Facility Operations, and the TOC side, Test Operations, and here at Stennis Space Center, and the Michoud Assembly Center at MAF in New Orleans. Here we do a lot of the maintenance here. The period of performance is 9 years and 5 months, and I believe that is potential through 2024. I think. I'm not 100% sure on that date. Next slide, please. The following this is what we buy. Well, this is a small version of what we buy. We buy everything in this office. We buy everything from pens and pencils to valves that go on the test stands, piping, tubing, just about anything you can think of. We have 4 buyers here at Stennis and 1 subcontract administrator. At the Michoud facility, we have 3 buyers and 2 subcontract administrators. They very knowledgeable in their job duties and what they have to do. Next slide. These are just some of the frequently used subsector codes in NAICS. We do, like I said, it's a wide variety. Anything you can think of probably with maintenance for the facility. Next slide. These are the most frequently used NAICS codes. There's a lot more that we could potentially put on this list, but as most of you know, this list would be never ending. Next slide. Below are some of the needs that we have here at Stennis for small businesses, plumbing supply vendors, promotional items like the 4-imprint items. You know, 4-imprint's a large business. We like to go with small business. We like small businesses for our industrial supplies. Fuel supply vendors. That's another one that we would like to have more small business participation in. Next slide. This is a list of our general manager, Doug Paulson. He is here at Stennis. Our deputy general managers, Greg Lesturgeon, he's at Stennis. Ron Daly, he is at Michoud. Our CFO, Regina Newman. Our S3 Prime contract manager is Tina Schultz. Their names and emails and the phone numbers are listed there. There are the addresses for both Stennis Space Center and the Michoud facility. I did see what I neglected to put on there. I forgot to put my email address and phone number. So wherever if I can put that in the chat, that's fine. We just supported the Green Run, bought a lot of material for the stands for them to use. And it went off pretty much without a hitch, finally. So next slide. Really don't, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. Some of the qualities we're looking for in vendors is the socioeconomic status, maybe some past performance with federal customers, suppliers of needed services, and quality certifications. If we have things that we need certain quality requirements, CFCs with boost spec drawings, we need vendors that can adhere to those specifications. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kay. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And again, if anybody's wanting to get in touch with Angela, you just got to let me know and I'll be happy to forward you her contact information. And with that, I would also like to introduce Mr. Scott Elliott with ACMA Operations Director. ACMA is also the parent company of our current security contract, RiverTech. And I also want to say a special thank you to them as well. When we were doing our showcases in person in Atrium, they always set up a beautiful display for us. So again, Scott, thank you so much for participating today.
Thank you, Kay. Well, first, I kind of want to thank Kay, Belfield, Mary, and the rest of the SSC team for putting this event together. You know, small business utilization is a very important topic. And it's also, you know, Kay herself is a true small business advocate that you don't see as often as you know, folks would think. But thank you, you know, to the SSC team. All right, so within this presentation, we're going to introduce ACMA, how we support NASA and SSC, and then, you know, teaming scenarios or subcontracting scenarios with us at SSC. Next slide. Okay, a little bit about ACMA. So we are a subsidiary of the NANA Regional Corporation, which is a Alaska Native corporation, and we have over 14,000 Inupiat shareholders that we all work for. We have 7,500 employees across the companies and 40 operating companies, including 14 active AAs. Next slide. All right. So bringing value to NASA. So something that attendees should look at is capabilities tied to your operating companies. For instance, we have approximately 40 operating companies, and as you see here on the third row from the bottom, RiverTech. RiverTech is our security services provider on Stennis. But it's important to have your organization structured around your capabilities and how you anticipate delivering great services to NASA. Next slide. Okay. Overall, Acama has 8 capabilities that we provide to the federal government, and 3 of those we're currently providing to Stennis, Goddard, as well as Ames. And that's protective services on Stennis, it's facility maintenance and repair on Goddard, and logistics and supply chain on the Ames Research Center. Next slide. Okay, a little bit more about how we're supporting Stennis as well as a couple of the other centers. So our particular program on Stennis is the Protective Services Program. Now, that has various degrees of services. It's not just armed security, but it is also investigative services, security police officer services, identify credential and access management services, dispatch services, training, armory services, locksmith, personnel security, and emergency management. So all those things tie into protective services contract and how we provide 24/7 security for the center. Now, that being said, those are the areas that we would be looking for in any kind of subcontract opportunities there. Now, there's also layered opportunities underneath that, and that's uniform acquisition, that is vehicles, all that, other types of equipment related to security services. So, keep that in mind when, throughout this slide or throughout the rest of our portion of the presentation when you're presenting your offerings to us. And then also Ames and Goddard, we are the logistics management services provider on Ames. And then the Acama support operations entity is the facilities operations and maintenance provider on Goddard. Okay, next slide. All right, our Acama leadership team supporting the SSC contract. So Lori Thomas, mobilized this program back in 2016 for Acama and for RiverTech, and has been there as a leader, and she's the president and general manager of that entity within Acama. Now, she's done a fabulous job. I can provide you her, contact information through the, chat if you'd like to reach out to her. And then reporting to her is Ben Dolan. Now he's permanently dedicated to the Stennis security mission, and that includes all the services that we provide. But he is a very experienced security services management expert. He's been doing this for over 3 decades. When it comes to experience, Ben has it. I can also provide his experience or his points of contact at the end of this chat or through email at a later date. But with that being said, these are the 2 that really drive the execution of a 24/7 security operation at Stennis. So they are decision makers when it comes to subcontracting support and how to effectively, seek an opportunity within Acama. Okay, next slide. Okay, a little bit about how to support NASA. So to give you an example, on the current Goddard program, the FOMS 3 program, a few of our team members, employees for Acama, They collaborated with NASA and helped support some additional funding. But I bring that up is, NASA, as well as, all the centers, including SSC, they're very supportive, and they drive a true partnership between contractors and the government. So I would say to you attendees on this list that are seeking opportunities there, make sure you present value to the center, not just a service, but how to make their jobs easier, how to support as Stennis at a greater scale. Okay, next slide. All right, so what Acoma is looking for in a subcontractor at Stennis, as well as other NASA centers. So in order to present value to NASA and present value to SSC, you as a subcontractor need to have past performance in the relevant scope of work. I mean, if you haven't done it before, it's somewhat challenging to make your case of why you can do it now. So it's past performance in it, it's technical expertise in the relevant scope, competitive pricing, and what your value proposition is. So how does your value proposition as a company, as a subcontractor, align to how the contract is performed, as well as how the overall NASA mission, and how that benefits the overall group. So that is really what we're looking for. So when you reach out to us, make sure you have that in mind when you're setting up your subcontract and teaming pitch. Okay, next slide. All right, so we talked a little bit earlier, the team did, about procurement vehicles. So as you see here, we are part of SOUP 5, but there's also a whole bunch of other contract vehicles that NASA, as well as other federal agencies, use. And my recommendation is pursue, teaming partners that have these contract vehicles, or get on them yourselves. It's a great opportunity to utilize an existing contract vehicle for quick procurement opportunities. Next slide. Okay, so steps for how you reach out to us. So step one, we have on our website, we have a Team With Us tab. So go to the link provided, and all you do is fill out a quick form. It's, what NAICS codes can you provide, what your size is, and what capabilities you have. Now, also in particular to SSC and NASA, please send me an email introducing your company, capabilities brochure, NASA relevant marketing and past performance material, your Duns and Cage code, and then also where you stand with your facility clearance if you have one. And if you don't, that's okay. Certain services obviously require having a facility clearance. And my email address is below. It's scott.elliott@acoma.com. Next slide. All right, here's some additional resources for the attendees. We have information related to 8A direct awards, if you have that qualification, and how to utilize that from a procurement standpoint. And it's a great asset for companies with that status. On the other hand, there is Acoma partnered with Market Connections. And what Acoma did was we put together a detailed questionnaire for procurement executives across the federal space. And we identified challenge, and there was a lot of answers to questions, and we figured out some consistencies. And there's a white paper published at the link provided. And it shows truly what challenges procurement executives and procurement professionals with the government face when delivering services, when selecting qualified vendors, and that type of thing. So it's something very, very helpful for the attendees to review. Next slide. Okay, here's my point of contact once again, and thank you very much, Kay, and the rest of the SSC team for allowing us to participate.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. Very informative. It's always nice to hear from you guys. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ms. Lori Jugan, and I want to say thank you to her since day one. She was the first person I met when I became the small business specialist for Stennis, and she has been a supporter of mine since day one. So I want to thank her for that. And with that, we have Ms. Lori Jugan. She's the program director for Mississippi Enterprise for Technology, MSET. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Kay, and thank you for inviting us to participate in this forum. We really appreciate it. And so I'm with the Mississippi Enterprise for Technology, fondly referred to as MSET or MSET, depending on which way. We answer to almost anything, and we provide a lot of different services. So let me give you a little bit of background on who we are. Next slide, please. We're almost 30 years old. We're a 501c3 private nonprofit corporation located right on Stennis Space Center. Building 1103 is located right next door to the NASA main administration building. And we were created by NASA, the state of Mississippi, and the university system, originally focused on technology transfer. We operate the Mississippi Technology Transfer Center in Building 1103. It is also a Center of Excellence for Geospatial Technology and a few other different names to it in terms of technology excellence. You see our mission statement at the bottom. Read that as we connect people. We connect people and companies with federal agencies and large companies that can use their services. And we connect those federal agencies and large companies with others that can satisfy their needs. So you heard Angela Lee talk about some of the needs for S3 as the facility contractor. We may have somebody in our umbrella that may be able to meet some of those needs. So we'll do an introduction and get those two connected. Next slide, please. We focus on really 3 areas of our work. One is technology-based economic development. Sorry, lost my video there. Technology-based economic development. Really, this was where we started, finding technologies that were needed for NASA, for NOAA, for the Navy in their federal programs, as well as taking the technologies that were developed in those programs and spinning them out to commercial companies. I mentioned that we manage the Mississippi Technology Transfer Center. We lease space to technology companies that are looking to either be close to their customer at Stennis or to develop their customer base at Stennis. A lot of our client and tenant companies come to us because they've got a contract at Stennis or are looking to get a contract at Stennis down the road and need to be close to that customer to interact, but need to have corporate space, not just government space. And then technology transfer and utilization. Again, we have trusted agreements with NASA, with the Navy, and we work in a slightly less formal relationship with NOAA to make sure we understand their needs and go out in the world and look for companies that can address those needs. Next slide, please. So at Stennis in Building 1103, we have anywhere from a single person office to multiple person offices. We request additional space. We have dedicated space for MSET in our building, but then we can request other spaces either in the building or in other areas of Stennis that are available. And lease through MSET. That way, NASA does not have to have individual leases with individual companies. It can be all under the MSET umbrella. It is open to companies that support the NASA mission, the Navy mission, NOAA mission, or you saw the large graphic that Mary Bird provided with all of the different tenant agencies at Stennis. that just scratches the surface. Those are the federal agencies and the larger prime contractors. That doesn't include the subcontractors and many of the other large companies that are here. So anyone that comes to us, we take a look at what they do, their corporate products and services, and make an assessment first to see if it's someone that makes sense to be in our building. If not, we also work with economic development organizations across the coast to find areas that make sense for companies. You know, for example, we recently were approached by an aquaculture company, and we sent them to the Ocean Springs area where the University of Southern Mississippi deals with aquaculture research. I have a point of contact there, Jo Beth Kavanaugh. If anyone is interested in space, physical space at Stennis, and you know you fit that role, you know, give her a call, send her an email. With every tenancy comes a package of benefits and services that MSCT provides. I'm going to start on this page with those particular benefits and services, but they are also, I'll continue again on the next page as well. Really, one of the things that Stennis, that people come to MSCT for is Stennis business development. What do we do? What happens at Stennis? Who needs my products and services? And how can I reach out to those points of contact that can help me get a contract, get a buy, find the technology, develop the technology, make a connection with an engineer if I need some advice. We tend to keep track of all of that and be able to connect you with who you need, or hunt down the person that you might need. So Stennis has 5,000 employees, as Mary Bird mentioned, and sometimes it's really hard to figure out who to talk to. We deconflict all of that. So next slide, please. So for those who would like MSCT's product, services, and benefits, but don't need space, we have an affiliate program. It is a fee-based program based on the size of the company, and all of these benefits are provided. In general, introductions to federal agencies and large prime contractors that absolutely use the products and services of the small business client, and then matching that to whatever programs are out there. We do email introductions, explaining to the point of contact, say the Navy, for example. You know, we'll explain what the company does and why we feel the Navy would need to look at them. We also help companies develop strategic partnerships. A lot of that is focusing on, you know, we heard a couple of companies that provide services already to Stennis. Well, those contracts do come up for rebid. We are approached pretty much on a regular basis by large contractors or potential prime contractors looking for strategic partners. Or sometimes there are small companies that just say, hey, I really want to get into some role at Stennis. Where do I start? A lot of times that's starting as a subcontractor or a vendor to a larger company that's already here. And then you put together that story for your own company and grow it from there. And then the third is technology transfer. And I've kind of talked a little bit about that already. You know, what can small and medium sized companies do, even large companies in some cases, but that development of new technology, what the federal agencies are looking for, not only with a particular SBIR program, but there are other programs that are out there that sometimes look at a little bit more speedy delivery of funds, and they want the technology a little bit faster. So the whole idea is to really look at, you know, what is the product, what is the service, and where does that fit in? Next slide, please. Oop, yeah, there you go. So again, back to where do you fit in? We look at the products and services of all the companies that come to us, and look across the federal agencies, across the large businesses, and say, okay, these are the top 3 that we suggest that you go and speak to. We maintain a small business specialist list, and that is available to anybody who just feel free to email me. My contact information is on the last slide. And we've got a new small business specialist list coming out in June. Over COVID, it has changed significantly, as one might imagine. But that is 4 solid pages of information that you can use to determine who is the right point of contact for your product and service. And then we also have some really exciting things coming up in the near future. We were awarded, it's a Navy program, but it's a technology bridge. And if anybody is interested, you can Google NavalX, NavalX. And find out what the tech bridges are about. But they're a little bit more rapid way of connecting federal agencies. It is Navy led, but NOAA's involved, and we're also getting NASA involved to find technologies that are, from the garage door engineer, from small companies that might never have done business with the government before, and reaching out to them and bringing their technology into the fold in a little bit more streamlined mechanism and a little bit more direct funding. For example, if a company has the greatest technology, but it's square and needs to fit in a round hole, that program will be able to provide a little bit of funding that will make that transition so that the Navy can test it, or NOAA or NASA. So it's a multi-use contract through which any federal agency can look for new technologies. So stick with our website, and we'll be able to post a little bit more information as we go forward with that program. Next slide, please. Essentially, you saw that big, huge list of people that are located on Stennis, but it's also surrounded by gates. The gates hold information in and they hold information out. And Kay, kudos to you for all of the programs that you've put together in this new virtual world that help information transfer. Information is your friend. The more you know about where you fit within the NASA federal city, the less time you have to spend marketing, the less no's you get. The more no's you get up front, the less money you're spending hunting. Our job is to help you hunt more efficiently. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is we have what's called the Oceans in Action Workshop. It is a venue, an event. It'll be in person. Yay. I know that everybody's looking forward to getting back to in-person events again. It is more Navy focused and NASA focused, and NOAA focused, but we will have some NASA participants this year. If you are interested, it is a great way to find out an overview of what happens at Stennis that is dealing with other than NASA. Last slide, please. There is my contact information. I mentioned before that the small business specialist list will be available in June. If you are interested in that, please send me an email. If you want to take it one step further, ask me to look over the products and services that your company provides, and I will give you the top 3 organizations that you should contact. So, Kay, thank you very much. And any questions can go in the Q&A box.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Okay, Brianna, your turn.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the wonderful presentations. At this time, can we ask all of our speakers to come back on camera? We will now have the Q&A session.
Wonderful. Just waiting for the cameras to turn on. Outstanding. Thank you so much. This is Renee Cruz, and I will be moderating your questions this afternoon. The first one I would like to start off with is, how do we identify NAICS numbers for our products?
Belfield, would you like to answer that one?
Sure. The NAICS code, you can go online and search based on based on the industry. There's a NAICS code for everything. It's a North American code that was established, and it's at several different levels. It starts off at a three-digit level, and it goes all the way down to the 5, and it identifies the different products and services that falls under each category. So that's one thing I would recommend doing. You could just Google NAICS, and the list will come up. On the website will also come up, and you can start from there by putting in the service or the product you provide.
I was saying, I think that's the question, was how do we actually determine what a NAICS code is for procurement? And I would say it goes back to what you were just saying of the history of what the product is, the description of it, and how it falls in line with the chart with the NAICS.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Next question.
Yes, wonderful. And thank you for that detailed answer. The next question, is will subcontractors' past performance be accepted?
So I can answer that as well. The FAR and the past performance guide allows the contracting officer to consider subcontractors' past performance. However, this is one of the things that I always point out to small business. If you're a subcontractor on a contract, ensure that the prime within their CPAR identify your cage and DUNS and name as a subcontractor, and identify the work that you did, as well as how well you did the work. Because what happens is, when that's completed within their CPAR, identifying your information, you as a subcontractor can then reference that CPAR in the future. When the contracting officer goes out and looks up that CPAR and see your information, they can then use that information. If your information is not there, we cannot use it. So it's really incumbent upon the subcontractor to ensure that their prime is including their information within their CPAR.
Thank you. And Angela, with that, I would like to say, how do you guys look for past performance and those that contact you?
Well, we do it a couple of different ways. We have a vendor evaluation form that we have them fill out, and there are times when we contact when we see who they've done business with. We've gone into Sam's and done their search under reps and certs. We'll look at some of their latest contacts, who they've worked for, and our subcontract administrators may reach out to them to see how they submitted timesheets or how their performance went, safety performance. So we do reach out to past vendors.
Okay, so thank you. What key takeaway I heard from you is that you validate SAMs. And so that's a key thing that vendors have to remember too, to always make sure your SAMs account is up to date.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next question, Renee.
Wonderful. Next question is, hello, I provide marketing and leadership professional development and consulting services. What are some ways that a one-person small business can do business with Stennis Space Center within this type of scope of work?
So usually when I get approached by questions of that type of nature, unfortunately, this goes back to you have to determine what's the mission of the center, and then what is the primary procurements that are being procured for that center. And so for us, it's most likely going to be construction. Otherwise, we would forward that on to our prime vendors. Now, do remember our prime vendors too also have labor that they have to support and training. And so I would say that you could contact our prime vendors as well.
Okay, if I can also, one of the things that we do is we also work with the training and development organizations locally. So it really depends on, consulting is a big word. There's a lot of things that could go under that. If you're interested, please feel free to shoot me a quick little email, and we'll have a little bit of an exchange in what you actually do consult in, and can give you some recommendations from there. Because maybe it's not directly with a federal agency, maybe it's more with a training institute that we have locally.
Fantastic. Thank you. Next question. How do we find the business opportunities?
Come see me.
I was going to say that's a little vague of a question, but if you really want to know what your opportunities are, then once again, you want to know what contracts have been awarded, which you can refer to the OSBP mobile app to see the active contract listing, as well as you want to refer to the acquisition forecast to know what procurements are going to be coming up, as well as set up day-to-day email notifications through SAM and pay attention to SOUP and GSA.
And again, I would say, let me take a look at your products and services, and then I can match you up with the small business specialist list. At no cost, we will provide you with 3 contacts that make the most sense for your company.
And with that, I could add on to it. Angela, how do you guys promote what you're looking for?
Usually our subcontract administrators, they put it out on the web. I can provide that link in the chat in just a few minutes. They provide like their construction packages that are coming up, like at MeShoot or whatever. They will put those out on the web, and they'll solicit vendors or different businesses to give them the opportunity to solicit to present a bid for us. Mostly with the materials portion of it, a lot of times we'll use like the Thomas Register, or if we have a vendor list, vendors will send in line cards, and we have a little library on our shared drive that all the buyers use to locate materials.
Thank you.
Next question. Can a small business with no past performance find business at Stennis?
Well, I would say that definitely depends on the type of procurement that you're looking for, and it depends on your expertise. I would highly recommend for a company who's brand new as a startup to try to become a subcontractor prior to looking to becoming a prime. But that would be my opinion. Anybody else has any comments?
I agree. I agree with that. When a solicitation or RFP is posted, regardless of the work, it tells you, it identifies the criteria, right? And if it asks for past performance, even if you don't have past performance, it's rated as neutral. It's not good, it's not bad, it's simply that you don't have past performance. However, if you want performance, it doesn't have to be at Stennis. If you want, a good way to start off is by becoming a sub to another contractor and get that experience, and again, ensuring that prime identifies your cage code, etc., on their past performance so that you can use it. So that's one way to go about building your own past performance.
Thank you.
this next question, I think, is from Ms. Angela Lee. It's questions about S3, and it was, how can we register to do business with S3? And is S3 only only at the Stennis facility?
To register with us, you would need to contact me, send me an email with your capability statement, and what I will do is in turn forward you documents that need to be filled out so we can vet you as a vendor. It'll be sent to our vendor setup team, and you will be assigned a vendor code. Usually that just takes a couple of days, depending on how fast you can get the forms back to us. The best thing to do though is to contact me and send a capability statement, so then I can forward that out to our requesters and put you in touch with the right requester and right facility. What was the second part, Renee?
Are you only at the Stennis facility?
S3 is at the Stennis facility and the Michoud facility, the Michoud assembly facility. We are governed by PAE as our big corporation, and they are located all over the world, basically. So if you're not just with not just registering with S3, when you register with S3, you're not just registering with S3, you're also registering with PAE across the world. Does that answer the question?
I hope so. Sorry. Next question. What are your ideas to market the contractors, the contractors on the Stennis Space Center? And I'm so sorry. It says, what are your ideas to market to the contractor's house on the Stennis Space Center?
So if I'm understanding that correctly, you want to know how to market a company to the vendors that are already out there at Stennis? Is that the question, you think?
I believe so.
Well, to be honest, it's your own personal research. And so if you go to Stennis's homepage, they're going to give you a list of, I believe I know it's on my original presentation. I have a link on it that I send out. But within the Stennis homepage, there's going to have a link that says how to do business with Stennis. And it's going to bring you to other links of other tenants that are located at Stennis. And so for the most part, you just really need to do your own homework. You need to contact those vendors, try to find their procurement pages and see if they also have a link to the procurements that they're procuring as well for their forecast. But that's what I would recommend. It's just, unfortunately, it's just homework. There's no key answer.
Hi, Kay. If I can add to that as well. That's one of the things that we can help with. Again, looking at a company's products and services, narrowing down that focus a little bit and giving them an idea of where to go to market effectively. Our small business specialist list has names and contacts for all of those organizations, and hopefully it's the right person. We've done a little bit of vetting ahead of time so that we know not only that if that's not the right person, that's the person who will be able to get you to the right person. So again, that's a 5-page list of everybody that has a prime contract at Stennis already, as well as the federal contractors that are on site and the larger companies that are commercial out here.
Thank you. Next question. Can a NAICS code be different for GSA and NASA?
Well, this is Belfield. I would say no. The NAICS code is established, and I don't believe there's any difference across agencies. A NAICS code is a NAICS code.
Yeah, a NAICS code is a NAICS code, and it depends on the product or service that you're offering. However, a company can have multiple NAICS codes listed. So if you're unsure, you can always list more than one.
And I believe too that GSA also has categories too, that they may group certain things in categories. So you may be thinking of that as well as a separate thing from NAICS. But if you're interested in doing business with GSA, with Stennis, let me know on that, because that point of contact is Danny Scanley, and I can give you his name and number as well.
That's outstanding, Kate. Maybe we can put that in the chat a little later.
Okay.
What are some best practices to stay on top of opportunities, specifically not for everyone that comes up, but for certain keywords? So is there a word search or a database that allows vendors to keep up with the opportunities that come out?
Well, like we had previously stated, that SAM does have a day-to-day email notification you can set up for by keywords. I would also recommend too that you go to the OSBP homepage and look for the vendor database to register within that. That's also a resource that our contracting officers could use for market research. So that's another way too that you could put yourself into our system.
I have a question. This is, what contracting vehicles do you use?
We use SOUP, GSA, SAM, and so those are the opportunities that we have.
I have one comment that says, on a previous NASA small business webinar, I heard KTM can find out what providers are falling short on a project and what their needs are to see if it is something KTM Solutions can fulfill. Where is this information located?
Unfortunately, that's not anything that's publicized. I think if there's a shortcoming that's occurring through a contract, which I don't know of any, that's going to be handled through the contracting officer. But that's not something that's publicized. Correct, Belfield?
That's correct.
All right, so many wonderful questions. Some of the contracts on the app show an expiration date of 2020. Were these contracts extended or recompeted?
Actually, it would depend on the particular contract. We'd have to go look and see if it was updated. Once again, knowing that the procurement for NASA is doing a realignment of grouping their contracts by PSLs, product service lines, and certain centers will be procuring certain items. You may find that there are some contracts that towards the end may be extended a month or two, so they could try to line things up to recompete together. So it really would just depend on the particular one that you're looking at that we would have to work with you on.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. This concludes our Q&A session. This has been extremely wonderful. I am going to now turn this back over to our program specialist and our mistress of ceremonies, Ms. Trephilia Parker.
Hi. Hey, Kay. Thanks, Renee. And thanks to the panel again for your presentations and for the Q&A session. We have, if I'm counting correctly, we received about 81 questions in the chat. Some of them we answered online, some of them we answered as part of the Q&A session. And what we typically do is we provide the questions to the panelists post-event and give them an opportunity to provide a response, and we'll send those back out with the other materials from today, the presentation and recording, to the registered attendees. So thank you. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but we wanted to make sure that we give an opportunity for some questions to be asked now, and then the other answers will come later. Okay, so now I'm going to share a few updates from the Office of Small Business Programs at headquarters. We can go to the next slide, please. So we just had I don't know, I think I counted about 3 questions about NAICS codes. And so these are the top NAICS for the agency. You'll see the top is research and development. And this is where the agency spends its dollar. These are the NAICS codes where the agency spends its dollar. So this information will be included in the slide deck. Next slide. And Kay mentioned earlier that we have small business specialists at each center. This is a list of the small business specialists. We have the centers divided by their purpose, their activities. So we have our research centers, our space centers, our science center, JPL, which is our federally funded research and development center. That's in California. And then we have NSSC, which is a neighbor to SSC in Mississippi. So you'll again get this information as well. Next slide. And earlier when we first got started, we just shared that this is today's event is a part of our monthly webinar series on the third Wednesday of each month at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We invite you to join us online here on the WebEx platform. Our next presentation is coming up on June 16th, and we have a guest speaker that has not yet been determined, but I'm sure they will provide you with a lot of great information as our speakers did today. Next slide. And then, we always want to make sure we remain engaged and that we're providing relevant and useful content to our webinar participants. So if you have a topic, a suggested topic, something that you're interested in hearing and learning about, please send it to us. Our email address is smallbusiness@nasa.gov. You can feel free to send your topic there or any question that you might have for our small business office, and we will make sure that we respond to you directly. Next slide. Oh, well, okay. So we have a couple of events coming up. I think this was the next few slides. So on Monday, we have an event, and it's really targeting companies that are in the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, or if you're in the state of Pennsylvania. So if you're online and that applies to you, we especially invite you to join us at this event on Monday. It is open to all companies, but this event, we have participation with the Office of Congressman Matt Cartwright and our NASA administrator, as well as our OSBP associate administrator, will be the featured speakers at this event. So more information about that event is available on our website, and that takes place on Monday, May 24th. Next slide. And then the Office of Small Business Programs is participating at it's the 9th Annual Northwest Aerospace Defense Conference. And typically we would have done this in person. This event is usually hosted in Seattle, Washington, but we're all virtual right now. That event is on June the 10th. The event will feature an afternoon of matchmaking sessions where we will have all of our small business specialists as well as some of our agency primes will participate at that event. So it's a great way to take some of the knowledge that you received today and apply it, do your homework, and then come prepared to engage with the agency at that event, if your schedules allow. Next slide. And this is just kind of just a quick snapshot. I believe Kay covered most of this, if not all of it, in her presentation. Again, especially in this virtual environment, these are the ways that you can engage with our small business office via our website, our OSBP Learning Series, where we are today, our small business outreach events, our OSBP mobile app, and our social media platforms. I think there was a question on that in the chat. OSBP is on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our OSBP mobile app. Next slide. And that's just, again, a quick reference for your use. Next slide. Okay, that's me, Trephilia Parker. I'm at headquarters. That's my contact information. Should you have any questions or need any information, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you. Next slide. Thank you. So again, thank you to Kay and for pulling together the wonderful panel of speakers. We really appreciate it. Especially appreciate you, Ms. Bird, for joining us and staying on for the duration of the program. That's really great. I told Glenn, I said, I think this is a first for us to have this level of senior leadership from a center participate at one of our webinars. So we really appreciate your support. And again, Kay and all of the speakers, we appreciate you for participating today. And to our attendees, we thank you for hanging in there with us. I know we went over a little bit on time, but we had a lot of great questions and we were trying to get to as many of them as we could. So with that, all of the registered users or registered attendees will receive either a copy of today's presentation or a link to access the presentation as well as the video recording. And have a good afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you again next month. Thank you.